of course, everybody has heard the number, negative 16.5 for the second quarter. Now, the Bloomberg economists who were surveyed thought that the mean would be around 9.4, negative 9.4. Now we have negative 16.5. Were the numbers what we expected? And can we expect better numbers considering that we are still on lockdown or some sort of a lockdown into the third quarter?
Well, I didn't expect it to be this big because our economic managers kept emphasizing that their forecast for the whole year would be minus 3.5%, right? So,
Yeah.
of course, that's for the whole year,
Right.
for 4 quarters. So I thought that maybe it would be like tops 10, minus 10. So it was also
Right.
a big surprise to me.
So was this shocking? Is it scary? I mean, how bad is it then? Because if your projection was 10 and it's gone to 16, that's pretty high. That's so off.
Yes. So I guess part of it really is because we're all on lockdown. It's very difficult to feel the pulse
Impact.
of the
Yes.
market, right? I mean, we're all at home, so we don't really know how big a ghost town the malls are at this point. I mean, that's one gauge, right? So how much retail activity you have, for example. So it is just
Ma'am, but just to put some context in that, of course, we're talking about the second quarter, so that's a period between April and June, kung saan negative 16.5 ito.
Yes.
So what we're looking at it is that that was the worst, and the worst is, or the worst possibly is already over, and maybe it's time to move forward, or maybe we are already moving forward. Is that the right way to look at it?
Well, that's what our economic managers would say, but then I'm not quite sure because there are some indicators that would probably make us think a little bit more about that statement. Like, for example, unemployment numbers. As of the end of April, we've had the highest unemployment in the history, right? Since we started conducting the labor force survey in 1956, 17.7% is the highest ever, right? And that's 7.2 million individuals without jobs. But then, by end April, there were also 13 million individuals who had jobs. So they were not unemployed. They continued to be employed, but they were not at work, right? Meaning to say, they belong to non-essential businesses, meaning businesses that were not allowed to operate. They didn't have any revenues, but then their employers decided to still keep them. And therefore, it was their employers paid for the payroll without revenues, right? And so by now, then you would expect that their liquidity would probably be wiped out, right? So, so there's still a big portion that would be at risk of losing their jobs, right? So there are some nuances with the data that we're not quite sure what's happening at this point. So honestly, for me, it can go either way. I'm not sure that this is the bottom of it. It's unclear. That's number one. And number two, it also depends on how much interventions that the government would put in at this point in time. I think that's very, very important.
Congresswoman, dun yung tanong ko, how much interventions? I mean, this number, as you said, is surprising and disappointing number of 16% decline came out after Congress, both houses moved on their respective proposals for stimulus package. Was ano ba yung factor in those mga proposals ng House and Senate? And are we now saying that whatever was factored in may not have been enough?
So that's right. No, so before this announcement came, we were expecting a minus 3.5 drop for the entire 2020. So that would mean we would lose the 6.5% that we were expecting before COVID happened. And in addition, we would lose another 3.5. In other words, a total of 10 percentage points. And every percentage point is equivalent to 200 billion pesos in GDP. So more or less, we were expecting a loss of 2 trillion pesos. But since yesterday, I think according to Sec Chua, the newest forecast for the entire year is no longer minus 3.5, but rather minus 5.5.
5.5.
In other words,
Yeah.
we're going to lose another 2 points.
2%.
So, which
Yes.
means that's about 2.4 trillion pesos, right? So what we're saying, how much of a stimulus do we need? So it really
Yes.
depends on what we call the multiplier, like how in short, how effective every peso of government spending is to
Yes.
spur business activity everywhere else. And so,
Right.
in other words, if you need to avert a loss of, let's say, 2 trillion pesos, you divide that by the multiplier, say 1.53.
Okay.
Meaning to say, for every 1 peso that government puts in, that would spur activity in
One
other
and a half.
sectors.
Yeah.
And the total outcome would be an addition of 1.53 in GDP.
Right.
So that's what the 1.53 multiplier means. So basically,
Okay.
if you need to avert a loss of 2 trillion, you divide that by the multiplier, you get 1.3 trillion pesos. And so that was the basis for our economic stimulus proposal. So we said we need 1.3 trillion pesos to avert a loss of 2 trillion. However, this thing happened yesterday. So which means with the losses possibly reaching 2.4, then what we would need now is 1.56. So there's a one-to-one correlation, right? If we have a worsening COVID situation, and then therefore the economic damage is going to be bigger, right? And therefore the economic stimulus required to avert that loss is also going to be bigger.
Okay. But okay, Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Carl Chua has said that it's actually not fundable. Where do you expect to get that amount? Indeed.
So right now, so I've been tracking the loans that the government has been taking out. Last time I checked, it's already 1.7 trillion pesos. So I think realistically, that's going to be the biggest source of financing for any economic stimulus that government is going to undertake. And remember, our credit rating has been improving, which means we are credit worthy, right? So which means if all countries in the world would have to take out loans, we would be prioritized because our credit rating is good. And of course, the best time to use your improved credit rating is now,